right, Bitcoin accumulation country. My name is Phil. This is the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. We're in season 3, and this is episode 9. I've got a really interesting conversation. I got to sit down with DerGigi once again. For those of you who don't know who DerGigi is, he's the author of the 21 Lessons and quite a few other Bitcoin-related articles that really make you think. You definitely want to check out 21lessons.com to go check out his work. I actually did a podcast with him last year discussing the 21 lessons, and Brady from Citizen Bitcoin went through it at length, every single lesson in his podcast. So anyways, I'm going to put that in the show notes for those of you who either weren't around or didn't catch either of those interviews. Mine's slightly different than Brady's. Brady's is actually going over the 21 lessons in depth with Gigi, whereas mine is just more of like a surface kind of conversation and his rabbit hole story. And you know, so you get some different perspectives. Anyways, this episode, DerGigi and I sat down to talk about shitcoins, and more specifically to talk about kind of the mental traps that get people stuck in them. Anyways, this podcast is about an hour and a half long. I do apologize. My dogs end up barking at some point. Anyways, so look, strap in. You guys are in for quite a treat. So here we go. Here's my conversation with Gigi. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me on the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. I've got the author of 21 Lessons, DerGigi, with me. And I've actually spoken with him before on the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. But yesterday, we kind of caught each other on a thread about shitcoining on Twitter. And we just started going back and forth and talking, and just decided, hey, you know what? Maybe it'd be good to have a nice little chat about some of the shitcoining adventures, and how we end up in I guess in Bitcoin maximalism country, and maybe who knows? Maybe this will help some people because there's a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna stop rambling. Gigi, thank you very much, man.
Hey man, thanks for having me again. This will be fun for sure, and I can't wait, for the Twitter conversations after this recording, because it's a kind of an explosive topic sometimes.
It is. It's like we often, as quote unquote, I'm just going to call myself a Bitcoin remnant, which I got from Francis Pulio. But, ever since we became, like remnants or toxic maximalists, it seems that, people think that we're just a bunch of assholes, screaming that everything is a scam. And, so.
Well, by the way, I absolutely loved the episode you did with Francis, and it moved me a lot, actually. Like it's a very important episode, and I think everyone who can kind of identify with Bitcoin maximalism and went through a similar journey should check out this episode. And it's also very helpful to have a name to this phenomenon, like not trying to convert the masses, but preaching to the remnant, so to speak. And it's very useful to have that. At least it was for me, because I always felt intuitively that's what I have to do, and now this phenomenon has a name in my head as well. I was not familiar with the remnant before, so that was a great episode. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, you know what? It was awesome. And see, so Francis was one of those people I was kind of intimidated and afraid to interview for a while. because I felt that, like, I just maybe wasn't, I didn't have all my information right and all my facts right. And it was great because he just, like he said, it was a sermon. I mean, I started with him and he was just like, he just laid it all out. Now let me ask you this. So I'm guessing, did you end up reading Isaiah's Job?
I did.
Or I should say listening to it, because it was also in audiobook format.
Yeah, I read it actually, and I can highly recommend to all the Bitcoiners to read it. And if you don't understand it or don't identify with it, so be it. But
yeah,
it spoke to me very deeply.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Goosebumps, man. It actually gave me goosebumps. I really, I agree. It totally struck a chord.
And so to be clear, in a way, I self-identify as well as a Bitcoin maximalist, but as many people say, it's it's descriptive, not prescriptive. So it's a point where I arrived at after years of painful shitcoinery and not really understanding what Bitcoin is about. So for those who don't know, I come from the technology world and I study computer science. And so my first contact with Bitcoin was um, quite early, actually. I needed multiple touch points. So I had some friends that were into Bitcoin really early, but it didn't click for me at all. I needed to be forced almost into Bitcoin. And I had I think 3 or 4 touch points over multiple years until I fell down the rabbit hole. And I think um, the first touch point was in 2014, and I was lucky enough to actually find it interesting enough, but not take it seriously. I think my first bigger purchase was in 2015, and so doxing myself right there a little bit in terms of holdings, but many boating accidents since then,
Oh, of
and a lot
course.
of shit coinery. So I'm not one of the whales, that's for sure. And so I get a lot of shit from people in terms of being a toxic maximalist, and I would like to address all of this because a lot of people come to me and say I have no idea about any other projects, and there are so many other interesting projects, and I shouldn't dismiss anything out of hand. And I just want to make it crystal clear that this was my state for many years. I didn't dismiss anything out of hand. I read all the white papers. I tried to run all the software. I looked into so much. You have no idea. You have no idea what kind of stuff I actually looked into. And I agree that there are some interesting ideas and some interesting thoughts, but what most people don't understand is none of those projects need a token or need to reinvent money for them to work. And that's what I think a lot of people just don't get at all.
Yeah, you know what? I definitely, I definitely agree. And okay, so I want to go back to something that, so because you have a technology background, I have a technology background, and one of the points that I wrote down was, the better than Bitcoin technology trap, right? Like when
Yeah.
you start off and you kind of like, you're not really paying attention to the sound money aspect. You're looking at Bitcoin as a value transfer technology, or as a technology to transfer funds from A to B, or whatever it is, whatever kind of like high level misconception you have. These other shit coins, because you're looking at Bitcoin, let's say, or incorrectly, these other shit coins seem to have a valid use case because you understand the technology. And to your point, I did the same thing. You came in 2015. I came in late 2016. My first Bitcoin exposure was, the Bitcoin price was around $400. And I started reading all kinds of white papers for all the different types of shitcoins you can think of, like Telcoin, Komodo, was it First Blood, XVG? I mean, man, all this garbage, and to me, they all seemed like they were valid ideas. Why wouldn't I have a token for the game, and a privacy token, and a dental token, and a token for dusting diamonds, and another token for cars? It all makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense if you have no idea what money is and no
Exactly.
idea about monetary economics. And I can't remember who said it. Actually, it was a very prominent Bitcoiner who said that Bitcoin is money and shitcoinery is just barter. Like if you would actually, for every different transaction or every different area of commerce, have a different token, or every single shop would have a different token. That's also something that drives me mad, because Andreas is talking about that, and he really bought into this multi-token economy. It's basically a situation where the whole economy reverts to a barter state, and that's just not useful at all. And the great thing about money is that it it automatically it it kind of arrives at one thing that you use for money, and it helps to do your economic calculations, and it helps to just solve all the problems you run into when you are in a barter economy. And most shitcoiners just don't realize that that would be the case if you would have a separate token for everything you're trying to do.
Oh yeah. It makes no sense. I once actually started writing it down, right? Like, let's say you had to do all this and you had to sit there and constantly, so, one type of industry would accept one type of coin, but why would they do that? Like, so, what, like, talking about shitcoins, right? I find like XRP is like one of those traditional ones where everybody or I shouldn't say everybody, but all these shitcoiners, the XRP army, they're like, the banks are going to use this, so it's going to be huge. So I want to understand something. So a bank transfers value from bank A to point B using this specific type of quote unquote token. How does that help you as a person buying food at the store or storing value? Let's say, even like today, people traditionally store value in stocks or, gold, or in Bitcoin like we do. Like, why? I don't understand. Like, why does that affect me that the bank is choosing? Like, when do I use the Swift network? You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
yeah. The thing is, what I think what many people really don't understand at all, and what Francis touched on as well, is that money it fulfills a very specific role. It's a different good from other goods and services, and that's also why I believe that monetary maximalism happened in the past and is a natural, valid stance to have. And the reason is that all monies are in competition with each other. And Francis pointed that out very nicely by mentioning that every Forex trade is like there is not one Forex trade that was a win-win trade. If you trade something that you want to have,
it's true.
Like, most trades are a win-win situation. Someone likes to get rid of something, someone else wants to have it, and the person who sells the good gets money and can use it for something else. And just money trades are never win-win. And that's also why, especially like in general, everything fights for liquidity. Like, if you look at the world economy and goods in general, that's why people are also diversifying in old cars and Rolexes and real estate and so on. It's all used as a store of value. So it even applies outside of the realm of monies. But then you come back to what exactly is money. And once you realize that money is just the one good that has the best monetary properties and the most liquidity, then you kind of start to understand that some phenomena, for example, why in prisons cigarettes are used as money. It's the best thing that fulfills the role of money in this particular situation. And so trading money is a zero-sum game essentially, and thus dealing in altcoins is also a zero-sum game. Even if you try to trade altcoins, like a lot of people, they justify shitcoinery by just saying, yeah, they just want to acquire more Bitcoin, and I'm all for acquiring more Bitcoin. But still, the activity of trading altcoins is just not a non-productive activity in a way. It's a zero-sum game in the end.
So, what? Talking about trading, let me ask you this. Did you, or I should say, when did you realize, like, I don't know about you, but it didn't take me very long to realize that sats were what mattered and not my local currency. So this does have to do with shitcoining, because a lot of shitcoiners, the idea is that they cash out into their local currency, right? So what they don't realize is that they buy a shitcoin that is not actually valued against their local currency. It is valued against Bitcoin. It's valued in Satoshis. So the Bitcoin price, let's say, goes up, their sat value compresses because the shitcoin isn't worth any more. So what you end up seeing, and this is why it's so funny when you see like these shitcoiners are like, oh my God, Bitcoin went up and my shitcoin tanked. Like, I don't understand why the chart's down. It's like, do you really not understand that?
Yeah, I think like there are multiple phases that you go through, and I think the first phase is just trying to get rich quick and maximizing your dollar holdings or your euro holdings or your yen holdings or whatever your local currency is. And so I think the first use case for everyone getting into Bitcoin or getting into cryptocurrencies, let's say, is speculation and trying to maximize your fiat value. But you said the shift for you happened relatively quickly. For me, it took a little while. So I'm not sure. Probably took maybe like 2 years or something. I think the main reason is that I never really cared about money. Like money is not my main motivation at all. I don't give a fuck about money, to be honest, and I never did. I mean, that changed, of course. Obviously, I learned a lot of about money, and I take my personal finances way more seriously now. But I was just, you know the meme, like in it for the technology. Yeah, that was me, but without the gold. And so I was just into the technical aspects of all of this and trying to wrap my head around the aspect of like what the programmable money could do and what this new network, this new peer-to-peer network could achieve, and how you could use it technologically, and how you could build apps on top of it and stuff like that. And so I think that's the reason why it took me so long. Like it took me quite a while to understand that this is a game of accumulation, and it really is about just the number of satoshis you have and nothing else. Like it sets the standard, and once you realize that everything else, that's why I also say fiat is that to me. I will never revert to the fiat economy. I will not sell out. It makes no sense at all. And I think that the first phase, as I said, is people want to get rich quickly. The next phase might be, okay, I missed the boat on Bitcoin, so I'm buying shitcoin X, and it might be the next Bitcoin or perform better or whatever. What they don't realize is that relative to Bitcoin, everything is losing. It's just the way it is. Like it's if you find any shitcoin and you buy it low in BTC terms and sell it in BTC terms as well, and you win in terms of sats, that's like a lottery ticket. Like it doesn't exist. If you just look at the charts and the past performance of shitcoins, it's dismal. Like all the shitcoins are down like 99% in BTC terms, and this will continue to happen. And there are very deep reasons why this is true. Like you just have to take my word for it. But it seems that everyone, especially if you have no idea about markets, economics and monetary economics, you have no idea what you're doing, and you think you're smart, and you think you're like, this will be the next Bitcoin and it will perform as well, and you're just eyeing your dollar gains, but you will just get burned and wrecked like everyone else. And also in terms of trading, that's why I'm a big believer in not trading. You have no idea what you're up against in terms of trading. Like there's like the top 1%, or maybe even like 1/10 of 1% of traders that actually make a profit, and they're doing it full time, and they have all the tools that exist in the world to help them, and you will not outperform those traders at all. And again, like I think it's way smarter to just produce value and getting paid for the value you produce, and just start saving in sats and not bother with trading at all, because trading, again, is a zero-sum game. That's how I see it.
So I don't know about you, but when I was trading, and to your point, I was in it mostly for the tech. But when I saw that I could also possibly capitalize on it, I went and fell down that rabbit hole. Oh damn, I forgot.
Lost the train of thought.
I lost the train of thought. Damn
no
it.
Worries. I mean, the thing is,
sorry.
No worries. The thing is that I of course know that it's very tempting as well to go into Bitcoin purely for personal gains. And I'm not saying that's wrong at all. Like everyone is in it for personal gains as well. But it's kind of it's a bit of not contradiction is the wrong word, but I think most Bitcoiners, that like most toxic maximalists, they're not necessarily in it for the gains. You know, I think most people that actually can deal with the space because it's really it's not that easy mentally to ride the volatility
Oh,
and deal with the toxicity and everything else. So I think most people that are in it, they are really in it to build a new economy and fix the problems of the fiat system. If you're getting rich in the process, all the better, you know. But I think most people, they're not in it for the gains per se.
now I remember what I wanted to say. It had to do with your point about building value and bringing value. Okay, so when I was sitting there, trading shitcoins, I would pretty much spend like 18 hours a day sitting there, constantly watching charts, constantly refreshing Blockfolio. Okay, constantly trying to, you know what I mean? It's like one day you'd be up and you're like, all right, I'm up in BTC, and then the next day you're like down way more than you were up the day before. And then you go and you try to find the next shitcoin that is pumping. And I kid you not, I can't tell you how many people sit there and buy the tops and sell the bottoms. Because the next shitcoin always looks like that, like it's this is the one, like this is the one that is going to be as big as Bitcoin. And then you sit there and you buy the frickin' top.
I mean, I think that's just human psychology. That's just people FOMO in, and then they panic sell when it's going down again. That's how it works. But what I would love to talk about as well is just the different biases that people have that are new to the space, and that might just be helpful. And maybe some people that get in with the next wave will find this episode and listen to it, or just I want people to be aware that these biases exist and they are real, and they are really dangerous in that way that a lot of people they get into shitcoinery because of these biases. And I think the biggest one is unit bias.
Yes.
It's just I can't afford the whole Bitcoin,
Yes.
And it's just, I missed the boat. Because you kind of have to buy one Bitcoin. What's the use of 0.000 or something Bitcoin? That's that's not worth anything. I need like one whole coin, and so I might be better off buying shitcoin XYZ because I can buy 100 of those with the same money or whatever. And also with missing the boat, it's what I would like to call it the timing bias. Like everyone thinks he's too late. Like everyone thinks that they missed the boat.
Were you too late? Were you too late? I was.
I think well,
because we all have timing bias. I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. I was too late at 400.
But OGs that bought at like $1 or below $1, they thought they missed the boat.
That's right.
There are people that say like I missed the boat because now it's 20 cents. And it went up from, like 1 cent to 20 cents. And that's 20x. And no asset will ever do 20x again. So I missed the boat, and that's, I mean, you can look it up, like Bitcoin Talk is full of those people. And they're like, this is a known fact. And there are many people that were way early that everyone thinks they missed the boat. Just be aware of that. And once you realize that, I mean, I'm convinced that the cycles will continue as they have. I think just Bitcoin is set up to pump forever. I will quote Matt Odell quite a bit in this episode because I think he's just spot on with those things. I also think that Bitcoin is designed to pump forever, and it will just follow the step function as we have seen. It's like an order of magnitude step function. So you're not too late. It's I don't think that there is such a thing as being too late, because if we're right, then everyone will use Bitcoin one way or the other at one point in time, and you will just find your way into Bitcoin. Whenever you're ready for it. That's how I think about it. I think we're all early, and I think for the next 10 years or so, everyone will still be kind of early. That's just how this works. And just be aware that everyone thinks that. So if you hear that, you're not too late. I'm telling you that.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got unit bias, we've got timing bias.
Yeah, I have a couple more.
Yeah.
I think there's also the stuff you mentioned with the old technology. So a bias that Bitcoin is old technology and
Yes.
that it's outdated and it's not developed anymore and it's not moving forward and so on. And I think a lot of people got tricked into Ethereum because of that, because Ethereum marketed itself as Bitcoin 2.0 pretty much for the longest time. And then it marketed itself as an unstoppable world computer. And then it marketed itself as a smart contract platform. And all of those are lies in a way. It's debatable if the people that are telling those lies know that they are lies. It's very easy to fool yourself as well and believe that as well. But the thing is that uh, it's complicated to understand in a way, but all the design decisions in Bitcoin, they're trade-offs, and every system that works like Bitcoin, it needs to make the same decisions in like it needs to make the same trade-offs. And just to pick out one example, a lot of people complained that Bitcoin isn't flexible enough because it's not Turing complete. And you heard this word this word was thrown around so much that it's not Turing complete and we need something that's Turing complete and so on. And I think that in the next wave we will hear similar arguments. Just be aware that all of that is bullshit, and the reasons why it's bullshit, they're kind of complicated. Like it's I can't explain it in a couple of sentences, but the beauty and the benefit of Bitcoin and of sound money is that it has to be simple in a way. It has to be stable in a way from a technical perspective. Like the move fast and break things mantra, it doesn't work for money. And it shouldn't work for money. Gold is money because it just doesn't integrate. You can't destroy gold. So it's a very chemically simple metal.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't react with other things, and that's why it's really good money. and Bitcoin in a way is very similar to that from a technological standpoint, even though take that with a grain of salt, because Bitcoin is evolving all the time. And if you look at the code, for example, like it's similar to a human body that regenerates its cells. Like no line in Bitcoin, like the code lines, the version 0.1, which was the first one, it has nothing to do with the current Bitcoin version. So it regenerated itself multiple times over, and there is like no part of the whole Bitcoin organism, I like to think of this thing as an organism, is as it was in the beginning, but it's still, it's still the same system, and it still has the same soul, so to speak. And I can't, like the reasons for all that are kind of difficult to grasp and explain.
Yeah.
So that's the biological metaphors are the best I can do.
I like to, so Turing complete, right? To try to make it, I guess, to try to make it simple. It's like, think of it like this. They don't stop you from shooting yourself. Okay. whereas in Bitcoin, it is the money of enemies. It is meant to do one thing, which is be able to transmit value, in a censorship-resistant environment, in a very difficult environment. Whereas, unfortunately, the other situation is soft and lofty and can break, and you can end up with terrible consequences, as we've seen.
That's one way to think about it. I don't necessarily want to dig deeper into that one.
No, it's okay.
It opens a whole different can of worms.
Yes, it does.
Because Turing completeness, for example, comes with its own set of problems, and you run into the halting problem and other things. And that's why Ethereum had to introduce gas, for example, so you can run out of gas and the contract can stop and stuff like that. So it's just be aware that all of that is mostly technobabble, and it's just yeah, it is. I mean,
no, you're right. I know, you're absolutely right.
It's insane, especially speaking as someone who kind of has
a background in this
better than average understanding of technology and computers and computer science and mathematics and stuff like that, it's like 99.9% technobabble. It's nothing else. So just don't trust anyone who says that they have a Bitcoin 2.0. That's just not what this is about. And speaking of 2.0, I think another thing that we should mention, because I saw it during the mania as well, in like shitcoin propaganda,
Yep.
is version bias. That like, oh, Bitcoin doesn't even have like version 1.0 because we now, what are we at, version 0.19, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
Bitcoin Core 0.19. And people will harp on that as well, and point to the software that Bitcoin uses and point out that Bitcoin Core is version 0. something, and Lightning LND is like version 0.9 and so on. All of that doesn't matter. I just wanted to mention it because I saw it. As I said, some shitcoiners use that as a propaganda against Bitcoin. And that's obviously like bullshit.
Which I totally don't understand. I mean, all it does is suggest that Bitcoin is in its infancy. That's all it suggests. All it does is help reinforce the idea that we're early.
Yeah.
So again, it's like these people are going and building. They're trying to build. It's It's like they're trying to build the plane in the sky. You know what I mean? It's already in the sky. It's like Bitcoin is actually building on the ground and building the base layer. These guys are up in the plane. It's already flying. They're like, all right, let's put together the wings.
yeah. I also heard the metaphor of like building skyscrapers on top of skyscrapers, and I think that the version thing, it reflects the caution of the Bitcoin developers as well. Like everyone who works on Bitcoin Core, they know what they are doing, first of all, and second of all, they're very cautious and very conservative in their approaches, and that's also how it should be. I mean, this network, it handles a lot of value and it's growing by the day, and so you better be conservative and not break things and not like give false impressions in terms of also version numbers or stuff like that. And I think another bias or another misconception is in relation to fees and cost and speed. So that was that was the main argument of using other shitcoins and other networks, because Bitcoin transactions are just too expensive, and I'd rather use shitcoin X because it's cheap or even free and so on. And the thing is, again, it goes back to trade-offs, and it also goes back to understanding how these systems work. And you will never have free transactions. That's just a given. Like if your understanding is deep enough, that's just something you can be sure of. That no transaction in those kind of environments, like in radically decentralized environments, will ever be free. And I highly recommend a piece by Nick Carter who talks about settlement assurances. I think it's called it's the settlement assurances stupid, and it tries to compare different blockchains in terms of when transactions are actually settled. And I think that was just an early misunderstanding of Bitcoin, that we had a narrative of free transactions or like ultra cheap transactions. And I think we should be always cautious of talking about free, because I see it repeated now for the Lightning Network, for example. I mean, now the routing fees are almost like non-existent, sub-Satoshi routing fees, and it all, it all depends on network usage and how this thing will grow, because it's not a given that it will stay this way. In the end, it's a fee market, and the market will decide how much each settlement is worth.
I totally agree, and that's actually that's a point I make a lot about, that people are right now underestimating the fee market that will exist on Lightning. Like right now, we don't have L2 built in. There's a whole bunch of really, really great tech like L2 and Watchtowers that's going to be going into this, and it's going to expand the capability of Lightning Network. Okay, and I think that people are really, really misunderstanding the amount of fees. And actually, you know what? This brings up a good point, right? The bullshit argument that the Lightning Network will remove value from the base chain, Okay, that is completely retarded. Okay, because it runs on top of it. So when these channels open and close, okay, that this is the BS that noobs will often hear. Okay, that Lightning will take away the value from the Bitcoin network. When channels open and close, the funds are coming out of the base layer and going into the base layer. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I think that's just one further misconception, and I think it will be obvious in hindsight that that's simply not true. And I think everyone who experimented with Lightning will tell you, like, I set up a couple of Lightning nodes and I played around with it a little bit. I would love to invest way more time in it, but just so many blocks in a day, you can't do everything at once. But I made more Bitcoin transactions since I started to play around with Lightning than I ever did before. I think
bingo.
it's kind of insane, and I think once more abstraction will happen, and I think everyone who is following the development of Lightning and Bitcoin for that matter knows that all of this is coming. We already have stuff in development like loop in and loop out and circular channel rebalancing and autopilot projects that abstract that away. And the Lightning nodes of the future and also the wallets of the future, they will all do all of that automatically. Just like on the internet, so much stuff is done automatically, and you had to do that manually previously. Just think of encryption. Like not too long ago, if you wanted to have any encrypted communication, you just had to do everything manually, and you had to do key exchanges manually, and you had to meet up to to actually exchange your keys and verify stuff at those key exchange parties and stuff like that. And you had to do the encryption manually or use very special programs. And now it's just per default. And WhatsApp does it for you, Signal does it for you, Telegram does it for you. And I see just the same development happening for Lightning and Bitcoin, and also in the privacy realm for that matter. And I think all of that will just be abstracted away by technological progress.
Yeah, I definitely, obviously we see eye to eye on this. It's just, look, it's the user experience, right? What you're describing, okay, is the reduction of friction in the use. And as that friction continues to reduce, because that is actually what Bitcoin does as well, right? I mean, let's be, if we go back to the original uses of Bitcoin, right? There's multiple different uses, but one of the things that it really helped was reduce friction in difficult transactions.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that's exactly what people look for. Like, if we were still stuck using computers the way we used them in the 1980s, it would suck. Like, and it did suck. I mean, don't get me wrong.
People have no idea how much it sucked.
It's so sucked. And don't get me wrong, like, it was super cool back then. Like, trust me, like, I see kids today and the remote control cars and all the toys they have, like, our toys sucked. Okay, like, you had these remote control cars with like a 10-foot little wire stuck to it. It like barely moved. You had to put like 8 AA batteries and it worked for like a half an hour. Like, and you would never think that today, like, you would never sit there and be like, you know what, there'll never be a robot that just runs around and mows your lawn or cleans up your house. But it's the same type of thing with Bitcoin, right? People look at it today and they're like, oh yeah, the fees, oh it's slow, it's this and that. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. It's an infant that is growing into its environment, and
yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's anti-fragile. It thrives on the diversity. Like to quote Taleb, for the anti-fragility aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of those things are just a lack of vision by some shitcoiners, I think, because for whatever reason, people don't realize, just as you said, in the 80s, just if you had to build a computer or set up one of the very early networks, people have no idea how difficult it was.
Oh my
how
God.
much stuff you had to think about. I mean, if you put new hardware into your computer, you had conflicting IRQs, for example, and stuff like that. Like this shit is non-existent anymore, and people just don't know. Or setting up a network, everything is plug and play now, and it will be the same for Lightning, for example. I'm quite sure about that. And even if it's not on the second layer, then it will be on the third. It doesn't really matter. And this brings me back to one point that I really want to hit on, which is the blockchain, not Bitcoin crowd. And I think everyone in the space kind of knows now that it's Bitcoin and not blockchain. And I'm afraid that this will pop up again with the next cycle, that people really think the blockchain technology, whatever that means, is useful and interesting, and Bitcoin isn't. And it's exactly the other way around. The only thing that's really useful, the only thing that's really interesting is Bitcoin. And the second and third order effects of having Bitcoin as the sound money of the world. Bitcoin uses a very special database to achieve its goals, to achieve its decentralization goals, because it's all about the decentralization. That's, even though I hate the word and it's a buzzword, just like blockchain is, it's really true. Like the whole design of Bitcoin, all the design decisions have decentralization in mind. And this continues to be true for core developers. And for example, Andreas talks a lot about the 5 pillars of open blockchains. I'm not sure if I can list them on top of my head, but it's neutral, open, borderless. Help me out. I would have to look it
I'm
up.
I'm looking.
But it's you might hear the 5 pillars of open blockchains, and all of those 5 pillars, the reason for those 5 pillars is just radical decentralization. And the thing is that
okay, I got him.
Hit me. You list them, please.
Okay, I got him. Okay, so pillar 1 is open. Pillar 2 is borderless. Pillar 3 is neutral. Pillar 4 is censorship resistant. And pillar 5 is public.
Exactly. And all of these pillars, they are a given if your thing is built for survival and radical decentralization. Because if the system would be closed, if you die or the company dies that develops it, nobody could continue to work on it, for example. If I think about it this way, that everything Bitcoin does is it does in terms of survival, and part of this survival is having no head that you can cut off. And so radical decentralization is all it's the main goal. It's what's it about. But that doesn't mean that your decentralized project necessarily needs a blockchain. And it drives me insane when people talk about it. We have other decentralized things that work really well that don't have a blockchain and don't have a token. The internet is one example. BitTorrent is another example, even though it has a token now, but that's shitcoinery. BitTorrent works perfectly well without a token, and it will continue to work perfectly well without a token. IPFS would be another more modern example. Also a lot of shitcoinery going on with Filecoin, so don't buy into that. But it is, from the technical perspective, a very nice system that builds a decentralized file system. The only thing it has is an incentive problem. Git, for example, like Git of GitHub fame, most people know it because of GitHub, but Git is a decentralized source control system. Extremely decentralized, works extremely well. No need for a token, no need for a blockchain. So don't buy into this blockchain bullshit. It's just a buzzword, and it's just a very particular component of the Bitcoin organism that it uses to store its data. I mean, it's it's complicated. I don't want to say anything that's wrong, because everything in Bitcoin is intertwined, so it's kind of hard to single out the things. Bitcoin wouldn't work without a blockchain, but in my opinion, no other project needs a blockchain. And even if you think you need, for an incentive layer, for example, a token, you can just use sats. Make sats the standard, build a sidechain if you have to. Just if you need a monetary incentive in your decentralized system, you can use Bitcoin for that. That's the beauty of it. That's using money for it.
That's the point of it. It's one of the points of it is to use it that way. Like every single thing I see where people, what's his name? Dan Larimer, total, obviously complete shitcoiner with Steemit and EOS.
Serial shitcoiner.
Serial shitcoiner. Okay. So you make a project where people are writing articles and you can upvote and you can pay them. Why can't you just pay them in Lightning? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's no reason why they went and chose the only reason. Let's be honest. The only reason they went and chose a token is to specifically enrich themselves and separate unsuspecting noobs from their Bitcoin. Because
Exactly.
you'll notice when you're buying shitcoins, what are you giving them? You're giving them You're giving them Bitcoin. They're giving you they're giving you hopes and dreams. They're taking your Bitcoin and they're giving you this illiquid idea that is somehow going to become valuable if all the stars align.
Yeah, and a couple of months later or a couple of years later, they will sell out and crush your hopes and dreams. That's just, that's what always happened. And also, what might be worth mentioning is that there is just no way of repeating the Immaculate conception of
Yes.
Bitcoin. Because that's something that's kind of hard to understand.
Yes.
It took a long time for me also to understand. And thanks, and a huge shout out to Marty for talking about it all the time in the early days of TFTC.
Agreed.
Because he really drove home the point. And there are just now too many people trying to get in and front run, so to speak, a new system. And it's also that Bitcoin grew organically and is still growing organically without any premine, without anything else of that, bullshit. And what most people don't know that is that pretty much every shitcoin is premined or something that approximates a premine,
or founders rewards.
Yeah, founders rewards, stuff like that. And just the incentives are misaligned. And what I'm always surprised when I talk to people about shitcoins, which I normally don't do because it's just I've way better things to do with my time. But a lot of people just don't realize that Ethereum had a 70% premine, 70% of the supply. And so if you're buying into Ethereum and if you're also buying into, that's another rabbit hole. If you're buying into the transition to proof of stake or something like that, know that's 70% of all ETH. And thus, I mean, just if you know anything about this space, a lot of other coins also are anchored in ETH, so to speak. 70% of all ETH is held by a very small group of people. So just be aware of that.
That's right. That is exactly right. And it gets really scary because people don't really pay attention to this. And I want to go back to your point about the Immaculate Conception. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because there's some people who really don't like that idea, but people don't realize how central it is, not just to Bitcoin. Okay. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about like human archetypes, right? And, people in general, right? Let's look at Christianity, for example. There's the same exact idea of the Immaculate Conception. There's if you look at many religions, it's something that is. I don't know if it's something about the human spirit or whatever it is, but that is something that really reigns true to us at our core. This idea. That like it's, I don't even know what to call it besides Immaculate Conception, but it's almost like the birth of the Savior, so to speak. Like the Jews. We talk about the Messiah coming back and stuff like that, and the Christians have Immaculate Conception, and it's like it's a very, at least in Judeo-Christian ideology, it's very, very strong point, and it reigns true.
Mm-hmm. And It not only does it reign true, but I think it's absolutely essential as well to go back to the discussion about how everything stems from decentralization. That the whole point of the whole system is to have no central point of failure. And Jimmy Song once said that one of the greatest things that Satoshi ever did was to disappear. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, because that's also what differentiates Bitcoin from all the other shitcoins. Like, since Bitcoin came on the scene, like thousands of other cryptocurrencies were created, and none of these clones have Bitcoin's origin story, and they will. I think it will almost be impossible to replicate this origin story. And if you want to supersede Bitcoin, you will have to supersede its origin story as well. like it has to come out of nowhere in a way. And a lot of people just don't get that once you have identifiable founders, and once you have an identifiable developer team, and once you have people that can be coerced or killed or worse, this system is not secure because it will always be prone to government intervention. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin, that Satoshi was wise enough to start small, grow it organically, and then vanish.
That's right. That is exactly right.
Yeah, and I think that's also why it's a valid position to have to say that there's Bitcoin and then there are shitcoins, as we heard in in the where was it at the House of was it in the Congress?
I think it was in Congress. I'm not sure. It's either Congress or in Senate. I'm not sure. But
so that's beautiful. But I want to touch on one more point, because I think the whole discussion we had, it's mostly about Bitcoin and shitcoins in terms of other cryptocurrencies. But what really what changed my view on that, I think that's also one thing that a lot of people kind of go through. As I said before, first of all, you want to get rich. That's the main reason. Number go up is the main reason why people end up in the Bitcoin space, or in cryptocurrencies for that matter. If you're smart, you might want to maximize your Bitcoin holdings and get into trading altcoins. And I think the next step after that is realizing just how insanely broken the fiat system is, and just identifying fiat as another shitcoin. And maybe one step after that is identifying gold as another shitcoin. And I mean, not all Bitcoiners agree with this stance, but I think it's basically identifying in your head what the best store of value for your future might be. And I think there are a lot of Bitcoiners that now self-identify as maximalists, or are just best described as Bitcoin maximalists, and they are somewhere along the journey. And the most extreme maximalists, they are at the end of the journey by just saying that it's clear to me that Bitcoin in the future will be the best store of value and will be the money of the future and the money of a whole new global economy. And that's also why the best thing to do is just front run everyone else, so to speak, and stay humble and stack sats, as Matt says. And I want to quote Matt Odell again. He tweeted out something 2 years ago, I think. So there are a couple of people that realized it very early, and Matt obviously is one of them. And I'm sure there are people that realize that in if you just go through all old Bitcoin talk posts, I'm sure there are people talking about that in 2011, 2012. But Matt once tweeted, "I don't need to convince you that you need Bitcoin, and I don't care if you buy some. If I'm right, you'll understand the importance of sound money eventually. Until then, I'll be taking advantage of that lack of awareness to accumulate more Bitcoin than you." And I wholeheartedly agree. So if you're a shitcoiner and you're listening to this, you probably won't, because it's a Bitcoin maximalist podcast.
It is.
So, that's my stance on shitcoiners as well, and it's also my stance on what I like to call legacy people. People from the legacy financial world, or just I don't know,
no coiners,
my neighbors, no coiners. But there are no coiners that are
pre-coiners. No coiners that are pre-coiners.
Everyone's a pre-coiner.
That's right.
But it's just no use in arguing about it all the time. It's just, we will see how it plays out. And as Matt says, if we're right, then everyone will understand the importance of sound money eventually. And if you're wrong, it's so be it. So be it. It won't be the end of the world. I mean, maybe it will. Who knows? But
just to, I wanted to go back to what you said about, what could beat Bitcoin. And I was, because that's obviously the shitcoin narrative, right? And I remember I tweeted out about this about a week or so ago, I think. And essentially, the only way to beat Bitcoin, because we got to go back to that immaculate conception, Bitcoin was born in response to a need. Okay? You know, like necessity is the mother of all invention. And that's what happened was Satoshi went, he disappeared, and he left us with a tool to possibly help us fix what we've broken for so many years. Okay? So Bitcoin was born out of a need. And I think the only way that something could beat Bitcoin is for us to actively go through hyperbitcoinization. And there would have to be another crisis in let's say coming from the monetary system that we will build going forward. If Bitcoin is not, you know what I mean? If it's not perfect, then something would be born out of that crisis. If that were to take place, but we would still have to go through hyperbitcoinization to find out.
Yeah. There's kind of a lot to unpack here.
Sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. I think, first of all, hyperbitcoinization isn't really well defined, and I think a lot of people have different views on what hyperbitcoinization is, and if it is a point in time, if it happens rather quickly, if it is a longer process, something like that. And it's kind of related to the question of when has Bitcoin actually succeeded, because there is always, I sometimes hear people talking about once Bitcoin has won and once Bitcoin succeeds or whatever, something along the lines. I personally think we're in hyperbitcoinization right now.
Totally agreed.
I think we're halfway done in terms of time. I think another 10 years, it won't take longer. I think there will be some indicators that you could point to. For example, like oil being priced in satoshis would be one, and the decline of the dollar, for example, would be another one. Like the death of the current world reserve currency. And I mean, you could think up or dream up some indicators, but that's beside the point. I also think that Bitcoin has already succeeded. I think the most critical point of Bitcoin was not to die in infancy, and I think we're past that point. I think it's extremely hard to kill now. Like it's the only thing that could kill it, in my opinion, would be a global apocalyptic scenario, which destroys pretty much all information and maybe all humans. I think from everything else, Bitcoin could recover. And to come back to your point in terms of finding a flaw in Bitcoin or having some system that supersedes it, don't forget that we now have a very fair distribution of Bitcoin in the world already.
True.
And we have this UTXO set, and we can always adopt a new system using this UTXO set. So Bitcoin can evolve, and we could just keep the ledger intact. And I think I see it in a way, that
that's interesting.
We have this living organism, and I'm not the only one having that view. I think Adam Beck talked about it like a week ago or so. Like I was really surprised to hear him talk about it, because it's kind of esoteric thoughts, and I oftentimes think that many developers that are really very close to Bitcoin, they just see the problems and just see the code and are not that much into esoteric thoughts and getting cosmic about it. But when it comes down to it, the only thing that's really immutable and the thing that is that's it about is the UTXO set. It's the ledger. It's the history and the account of who owns what and what transactions happened. And there is literally no scenario where, like, except for a global apocalypse, where you could destroy it, because there are insane people like me that take good care of this UTXO set. And I know for a fact that there are people having Faraday cages with SSDs in them and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that there are other archival efforts, like for example the Internet Archive. It has bunkers in the Arctic to store information. And I wouldn't be surprised that there are people and projects and other efforts underway to do the same periodically for Bitcoin. And you can always recover from that.
That's a really good point. And I didn't even, so you see, like, it's like, I wasn't even thinking about the, one of the most important aspects, of Bitcoin, the immutable UTXO set, which can simply just be carried over. And that exactly, you know what? That's exactly the point. Would we ever need something else? Well, guess, that actually answers that question. That's no, we wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
So
also think that Bitcoin is that's kind of a controversial opinion, maybe, but I think Safe voiced this opinion as well, and I'm with him on that. Bitcoin is fine as it is. I think everything else, like all the problems, could be solved on second and third layers.
Oh yeah.
Like, even with the privacy discussion that flared up again, and also with, I mean, there are sometimes on Twitter discussions about introducing inflation or something like that. I think that's the like.
That is such
if
shit.
If you actually think that, I feel like you haven't understood the point of the unchanging monetary policy. Like that's the whole reason of the system. I mean, it's one of the main reasons.
I really think that the introduction of inflation into the base layer is just pure shitcoining thought. I think it's like it's like pleading to the masses. It's saying, you know what? All right, we can't change this. I'm just giving up. And we've seen, I mean, some really, really smart people in the Bitcoin space make this argument for for adding inflation, and it's like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
I also think that, I mean, again, everything in Bitcoin is related. That's why it's so hard to understand. But the inflation argument is related to the security argument, and I would argue that nobody.
What?
Yeah, sorry, it is. No, it is. But it is because people are afraid that in the future miners won't be incentivized enough to secure the network. So that's where this argument comes from, mostly. And so they are afraid that no fee market will develop and so on and so forth. But the thing is that nobody knows what kind of security is enough security for Bitcoin. That's just how the system is set up. We have no idea. In my opinion, Bitcoin is like hyper secured in terms of hash power. Like the hash power is so insanely high. That's also why I think it's like any like, and that's even beside the point. Like if you're a if you're a nation state and you want to 51% attack Bitcoin, it's insane what you would have to do and what you would have to invest. And 51% attacks are not even that useful. Like it's what do you get out of a 51% attack, except for a very short time window where you can double spend it way. Like it drives me insane, and a lot of smart people have this wrong, in my opinion, that talking about Bitcoin's security and how much security is needed, we have no idea how much security we need.
And you know what? I want to go back to this, like the whole thing about how the fee market won't develop. Sorry about that. The whole thing about the the fee market not developing, it doesn't. Again, that's another thing that doesn't make any sense, because Bitcoin no longer has a block reward. The block reward to me is to bootstrap the network and to continue to bootstrap the network.
Absolutely, yeah. And also there is no reason to think that no fee market will develop, because one developed with the last mania in 2017. Like we had insanely high fees, and I expect that to happen again. Like I expect the fees to adjust. And I mean, there were a couple of reasons for high fees, like bad calculation in wallets, for example, was one of them. But anyone who is worried about Bitcoin's future security, I would recommend reading a piece of Dan Held called Bitcoin Security is Fine. And he makes a very compelling argument why we don't have to worry about that. So there's no reason at all to go into shitcoinery because of that because of that thought.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really, I find that absolutely mind-boggling. Because of course, by the time the block reward runs out, Lightning will have already been in play for how many years? Like over 100 years. Like, I mean, really, exactly. And then people are sitting there and it's phenomenal, right? How short-sighted, and somebody can sit there and just say, oh, well, the block reward's going to run out and then nobody's going to want to mine it. You think there's not going to be any fees coming down from the layers above?
Yeah. So
like
the block reward will run out in 2140, so we will have 120 years to go. So I'm quite confident things will take care of themselves, so to speak.
Math, people, math. right?
Yeah.
It's like, all you got to do is zoom out. People, it's like once you zoom out, you can go, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm just really frustrated some of the time because in my opinion, all other projects are not even in the same ballpark than Bitcoin. Like if we would just talk about cryptocurrencies, quote unquote, because some of the projects aren't even cryptocurrencies. I mean, see OneCoin, this kind of scam, for example. And I just also want to, I mean, I want to defend the position of calling other projects a scam because whether it's a known scam or not, I still think it's a scam. And another recommendation, I think everyone who listens to this has already read it, but just in case you haven't, Everyone's a Scammer is basically making exactly that point. And I think that's the kind of viewpoint most people have when they say that all the other projects are scams. They are scams in that way that they try to take away your sats for whatever reason, like even if they want to sell you something to, like even if they want to sell you something that might be of use to you, they're still kind of scamming you out of your sats. So that's the point. And that's especially like it's not a 0-1 scenario. Like there graduations, how do you say, there are different levels of scamming. You have OneCoin on the one hand, and you have, if we stay in the cryptocurrency space, you might have Ethereum on the other hand. Even though I think there are other projects that might, let's take Monero for example. It's a gradual scam scala.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Some scams are way more obvious than others, but that doesn't change the fact that in relation to Bitcoin, everything else is a scam. But I had a discussion with Rockstar developer about that, and he advises against calling everything a scam because it dilutes the world. It dilutes the word in a way. But I don't necessarily agree, because I think it's very important to get this point across that Bitcoin is very different than anything else. Like I think Jimmy Song also wrote about it in a piece called "Why Bitcoin is Different," and he makes the point there very well as well. And the only thing that matters, like for real, and just if you haven't got it yet, just please believe me, the only thing that matters is Bitcoin, and you shouldn't touch anything else. So that's the main point I want to get across.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I wanted to talk about another thing about shitcoins that often gets people really confused. Is the partnership parade. That's what I had to. I mean, that's definitely what I've always called it, and that's what it is, right? We see it out of shitcoins, like like from Justin Sun, and stuff like that. It's just like every single one of them is a partner of another partnership and discussing a partnership, and it's like. At the end of the day, like, I mean, it's like your money doesn't require partnerships. That's not what money requires. That's what a business requires.
BMV partners with gold. That would be the headline.
Exactly. Oh god.
It would be interesting to rank order all the shitcoins by partnerships. I think IOTA, for example, would be very high up there as well. And it has been dead for like 2 weeks now or something like that.
BMW partnership, right? Isn't that what they? Yeah, that's right. They're going to use in the Tangle.
Exactly.
In the Tangle.
Yeah, I mean, I think. I think that's one of the main problems with in the space, that people view these kind of things as organizations or as some sort of projects, and they're really not. Like Bitcoin really isn't. Let's put it that way. Bitcoin is something entirely different. Like Bitcoin isn't an organization, even though I love, for example, Hasma Cook's piece on viewing Bitcoin as a startup. But it's a very different beast. Bitcoin can't run out of money. Yeah, like organizations die because they run out of money. They don't get funding. They make poor decisions, and they will run out of money and die. Bitcoin is also not comparable to, for example, nation states or anything like that. And Bitcoin is not comparable to fiat currencies because all of them die. Bitcoin, in my opinion, can't die. It's like open source software. It's pure information, and it can't die for that reason. And it's kind of insane to talk about Bitcoin as a living organism, but I think it's what's most true in terms of analogies. And once people realize that, talking about partnerships makes no sense at all. Like it's just obvious PR from shitcoin projects to impress newbies and to impress investors that didn't do their due diligence, and just to acquire more money so you can, exit scam and live on an island.
That's exactly right. And again, it goes back to the point. What are they doing? They're taking your Bitcoin. And actually, I wanted to talk about, because you mentioned OneCoin, okay? That was obviously a huge scam, and there's a new one, or newish, okay, called Cloud Token, and it's the same exact crap, and this one is even more complicated. Okay, you like to actually, to go and get into it. They're obviously they're getting more sophisticated with trying to steal people's money. But you got to remember, it's all you're doing is enriching a very, very small portion of people that are scamming you into taking something they value and giving you something no one values. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And in most cases, it's also something that they just can print more of. That's most of the scams, and also a lot of the shitcoins, they don't have anything resembling a monetary policy, and you sometimes see mechanisms where through simple decisions of a consortium, or through voting, or through super notes, or through whatever mechanism, you can modify the monetary policy, or just create tokens out of thin air and do stuff like that. And it all comes back to just understanding the monetary economics and the monetary aspects of all those things, and understanding money in general. And if you just view those things as technology, then you didn't really get it yet, because it's truly all about money. And again, I want to re-emphasize the point that money, like competing monies, it's a zero-sum game. Like it makes no sense at all. And it's either a winner-take-all or a winner-take-most scenario. I personally believe it's a winner-take-all scenario, and we also saw that historically. Like gold would have been the winner if it would have been better divisible, for example. We wouldn't have needed silver. And it will be the same thing all over again. Like as long as there is a free market, like a free competition between monies, one thing will win. And for me, it's clear as day, for all the reasons that we discussed, that this will be Bitcoin.
Oh, I totally agree. And I want to touch back on something you said about gold, right? I totally agree with the fact that metals, okay, gold and that type of system had essentially, it's like we are born shitcoiners, okay? Oh, yeah. If you think about it, you go back to the beads, you go back to anything that we've ever used as money. We're like it's like when we look at the metal specifically, right? We've got gold, silver, copper. So just right away in our base understanding of value, we shitcoined, because we were ready to take something of lesser quality to be money as well. So it's like it's baked right in. I sometimes think that gold made us into shitcoiners, and you have to like undo this mental thought. You right, like when you hear Peter Schiff with his cufflinks argument and all this crap. I mean, don't get me wrong, but like I forget who it was that wrote that article, and I seriously apologize. But the one where Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, and that's perfectly okay, or I'm fine with that. And that is exactly, it is doing exactly what it is intended to do, which is transfer value.
Exactly. It has no monetary premium.
It has no monetary.
It has pure monetary premium.
That's right.
And that's yeah.
I don't want to be able.
Connor Brown who wrote it.
Oh, that's right, Connor Brown. It's like I don't want to turn it into a crypto kitty. I don't want to turn Bitcoin into a GIF. Or something like that. Like I just want it to be Bitcoin, and it's the same thing. Like why would I care that I can melt gold into a cufflink or turn it into an instrument? All that does is prove to me that it cannot remain money.
Yeah, And that's the beauty of Bitcoin, or one of the beauties. There are many beautiful things about Bitcoin, but it's pure money. Like it's 100% monetary premium, and everything
Exactly.
else isn't. And I think what you said about gold is quite interesting, because I think it took a very long time for humans to arrive at the Schelling point that gold is good money, and we don't necessarily understand why that's the case, or we like we didn't understand why that's the case. I'm pretty sure about that. But everyone just kind of knew that gold is a better money than everything else, because you arrive at it. I think Francis talked about that as well. Like it's like unconscious A/B tests. Like if you have a pile of apple or a pile of fish, what's the better money? And so you go from money to money to money, and then you arrive at beads and shells and other things, and then you hit onto metals. And I think in the next couple of decades, it will be obvious for the whole world that Bitcoin is better money than gold. And I think the next competition of Bitcoin will be with gold and fiat monies, of course. And like I highly recommend rereading the bullish case for Bitcoin, because it just makes the best point about the properties of money. And in terms of durability, portability, fungibility, verifiability, divisibility, scarcity, and censorship resistance, Bitcoin wins. The only thing it doesn't have is an established history, and this will come with time, as we all know. It's like the Lindy effect will just continue to work its wonders, and the longer Bitcoin exists, the more people will realize that it's the best money we ever had. And it's just I don't know. It's kind of sad to me that so many people don't see this point and are caught up in shitcoinery. And the whole reason why I'm speaking about this at all is that I know it's just a lack of understanding in a way. I personally experienced that.
Yeah.
That it's a simple lack of understanding money and monetary properties. That leads most people astray and leads them into shitcoinery.
I totally agree. That's what led me into shitcoinery. Also forgetting why I came to Bitcoin in the first place. That also, because I came to Bitcoin for, for a medium of exchange. And, like from there, I began to learn its properties. But then all of a sudden, you start to learn about you start to learn about these shitcoins, and it's almost like you get lost in this mirage. So yeah, it's definitely, I think that part of it is also confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope this conversation cleared up a bit of the confusion, and I really hope that it will be useful to some shitcoiners or some recovering shitcoiners or some, maybe even some no coiners.
That's right. maybe it avoids them, suffering through some losses like us.
Yeah, and I think the main reason why a lot of maximalists are seen as so toxic is that you just run out of patience, and you've heard the same arguments over and over and over again. Like it's really hard to be patient with newbies, and especially with scammers. Like if people create their own tokens and create their own shitcoins. I think most of the people don't really realize what they're doing. I think they're it's hard to differentiate, but I truly believe that some people scam themselves, so to speak. They really believe that inventing a new shitcoin is the way to go. And of course, there are obvious scammers that just try to enrich themselves, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're creating a shitcoin to just acquire more Bitcoin or acquire more fiat. And it's really hard to stay patient, and just to all the toxic maximalists out there, please stay toxic. It's very, very important for the health of the organism. But also remember that most likely at one point in time you were confused as well, and you didn't understand Bitcoin in the same way you do now. And I think a lot of maximalists, they were deep into shitcoinery as well.
That's right. That is that is exactly right. A lot of us came through. The road. What is that? The road to heaven is paved through hell. So, it's the same type of analogy. I mean, you just go through shit and you just get reborn a toxic maximalist. And the more you keep going and the more you see these arguments from these fools that have no idea what they're talking about, that are clearly shilling their own bags, which are, unfortunately for them, heavily, heavily down.
Yeah.
Okay? They're very incentivized to sell you. I don't give a shit if you buy Bitcoin or not. I couldn't care less,
Yeah, absolutely. And just maybe some advice to people that still hold the bags and still hold shitcoins. Dumping my shitcoins and just switching to auto DCA was the best thing I ever did for my mental hygiene. Like, just don't wait for L season. Don't wait for anything else. Just like if you think we are kind of making sense, drop all your bags, leave the past behind, and just start dollar cost averaging. And don't trade Bitcoin. It's a game of accumulation, and if you can automate that process, it's the best thing you can do. Also, auto DCAing historically is the best trading strategy. Like, you can't beat auto DCA. And if you want to learn more about that, just check out the recent work of Hasma Cook. He's, I think, the biggest proponent in the space now.
Oh, yeah.
For auto DCA.
Big time.
And just rest assured that more people will realize that. And I think a lot of companies will be springing up in the future. For example, Swan Bitcoin will be in the US, will be launching quite soon, I think.
That's right.
And there will be the company that does auto DCA in Europe is Bitter. Like, that's the only one until now, but I think there will be more competition coming. And I think just if you have some money every month that you want to invest, and a portion of that you want to invest in Bitcoin, and it's debatable if you want to call that investing or not. I don't really care. Just if you still have heavy bags and if you can't sleep at night because of Bitcoin or any other shitcoins, just drop all the shitcoins, auto DCA into Bitcoin, and just be patient. It's, as Matt likes to say, I said I will quote him often in this episode, just stay humble and stack sats. That's the best advice there is. And it's the stay humble part is the hard one.
That's right.
The stacking sats part can be automated, and please do.
And it could be easy. So, actually, to your point, big shout out to Swan Bitcoin, right? Because they're going to be bringing auto DCA over to the to the US, which is really nice. I like their platform. I've already signed up, so big shout out to them. And if you're not going to do auto DCA, but you're just going to decide to accumulate, there's also in the US there's Cash App. And on that note, maybe we also want to give a shout out to Bitcoiner's Best, which is currently curating a lot of Bitcoin's best articles and podcasts and tweet storms. So give them a shout out.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe this shitcoin episode will bubble up to the top. You can vote on individual episodes.
That's right. That's exactly right. Hey man, Gigi, it was actually awesome having you on, man. This was really great talk.
Yeah, it was great. So I promise not to talk about shitcoins in the future anymore, but I think we got so many responses on Twitter that it was worth doing. And just again, to quote Matt again, stay humble and stack sats and just take care, everyone. Yeah,
it had to be done, man. Thank you again so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye.
I hope everybody enjoyed my chat with Gigi. All of the links that he discussed will be in the show notes. Of course, if you want to get in touch with him, his contact details will be in the show notes as well for Twitter. And of course, if you want to get in touch with me on Twitter or Telegram, I'm at CoinIcarus. If you want to reach me by email, I'm coinicarus@funwithbitcoin.com. And of course, if you want to support the podcast, head on over to moedarags.com, go to All Clothing and Fun with Bitcoin podcast, and you can check out our merch. All right, everybody. Catch you all next time.